Well, hello everyone. Welcome to our session with Dr. Tonya Jackson-Lopez, Associate Dean of STEM at Mojave Community College. Dr. Jackson-Lopez has over a decade of education, seven of those as biology faculty member before turning to the administrative dark side. A lifelong science enthusiast, she aspired to be a ballerina scientist librarian in kindergarten. She now channels that passion into academia where she's not at work. You'll find her skiing, mountain biking, hiking, yay, kayaking with her husband and adventure-loving super dog. Welcome, Tanya, and I'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Nathan. Hello, everyone. As he mentioned, I'm Tonya Jackson-Lopez. Today, I'm going to talk about a different way to keep your OER up to date, because if I have learned anything in my OER journey, it is exhausting to try to keep all of our OER up to date. Oh, it looks like I can't share my screen. So uh, with rapidly changing content in all of our fields, new discoveries, the need for up-to-date data, new technology applications, the high maintenance demands of OER mean that something that you create this semester, or maybe even something that you created 2 weeks ago, isn't relevant anymore. And it is exhausting. And it's something that I've talked about with all of my faculty and how we can make it better and kind of help each other out. So, a lot of our OER efforts, they really start strong, but they suffer from lack of upkeep over time. And without a plan for sustainable maintenance, our really great resources can quickly become obsolete, just as bad as our textbooks do. And I'm sorry for my grainy voice. I'm just getting over the flu. This is my first day back at work. So I've kind of suggested to my faculty, and something as I've started doing in my own classes. I'm on the administrative dark side now, but I still teach as often as I can, is that we bring in our students into our creation and use of OER. We make our students co-creators, we make them co-maintainers, we make them stewards of OER materials. And it does a couple of things for our classes. First, it means that our students are going to get involved in the sustainability of their own learning information and their own platforms. And that gives them, in my experience, a really great sense of pride, because our students know that they have built something not only for themselves and for their classmates, but if you can frame it correctly, you can tell them that they're helping build something for maybe generations of learners, semesters of learners, and really great class. You keep that with you. I still remember very specific lessons from pathophysiology with Miss Jeannie Mitchell at Truman State University. Took that class in 2007. Um, Great courses stick with us. And I tell my students that really great lessons, they stay with us. And you're going to be so excited to know that maybe one day you're going to build a class that sticks with someone else, and 10 years later they'll be talking about, like, oh hey, I remember when I took patho and my teacher walked in and said, Susie has Ebola, Susie's going to die, let's talk about how. You can help me build that, and it's something that creates great passion in students. So that's one really great reason to consider using your students as co-creators and co-maintainers of your OER resources. But helping your students help you maintain your OER resources is actually a really great way to include them in active learning. And we're all educators. We all know about the importance of active learning and what it means for our students to truly be engaged in their own learning. And then it's collaborative learning in action, because something that I'm going to suggest after we look at some of these examples is a student editorial board for OER, and it can actually help pull in learners from different fields into looking at OER in order to maintain them. So I'm going to put a document in the chat. It's a link to a Google Doc. It tells me it should be open to everyone. I'm not normally a Google Doc person, so if you wouldn't mind clicking on that link in the chat for me, please. Because what I am suggesting that you do in order to improve your kind of OER quality over time is that you use your students. It says request access. Oh, heavens. Anyone with the link can see. Copy link. Let's try this again. It says anyone with the link should be able to view it. If not,
I was able to get in on just now on your second link.
perfect. Thank you so much. I apologize again. Influenza A is not fun this year. So again, I apologize for my fuzziness. Oh, wonderful. It looks like we've got quite a few people in it. All right. So this is what I'm suggesting because this is supposed to be a workshop and not someone preaching at you. And we all know I probably don't actually have the voice to preach at you for an hour. So what I have created with the help actually of some of my students and some of my colleagues is a long list of subject matter disciplines. And it is examples and ideas of ways to get your students involved in the maintenance of the of your OER materials. Some of it is individual classes, some of it is just little small projects, some of it is examples of homework assignments. But for example, number one on the list is biology. I will openly admit to bias. I am a biologist. I'm a cellular biologist by training. Now I get to lead a whole incredible STEM team. But for example, something that you could do if you want to keep your students up to date or want to keep your, excuse me, sorry, OER materials up to date in biology class, students can update materials by incorporating, recent discoveries. We all know that science moves at a lightning speed. So maybe one of your assignments is having your students bring in additional case studies or papers that they have found that they are capable of understanding, because we all know it's very easy to find something that's super jargon heavy and not student friendly. But if our students can bring in these papers and our students tell us that they are of interest and that they are understandable, add them into your materials for that class. Make that an option for a discussion board post. Make that the subject of a journal club. You can have students improve your OER lab manual by adding more detailed steps. Maybe you think that you have a lab manual that's just crisp, it looks fantastic, it's straight and to the point, but you find that your students are actually, they're finding some gaps. We all have that expert bias. It's a very natural part of being an instructor. Maybe you make a Google document just like this one, and you allow your students to create edits. Maybe you let them take pictures and you add pictures into this ever expansive lab document. As you scroll down, you can see that there's a section on CIS. This is where I'm going to admit I have a very big blind spot because I don't know anything about computers. So maybe you can have learners create step-by-step tutorials for coding languages. Maybe they're constantly running into the same issue in SQL. Have them write their own little troubleshooting, their little troubleshooting sidebar and include it in there. As you continue to scroll through this list, you can see I have sections on English, art history, administration of justice, fire science, history, mathematics, communications. What I thought it would be fun to do, if people are willing, if you have an OER that you are currently working on that you know that there is a gap in what you're doing, if you wouldn't mind unmuting or typing in the chat, do we have your course on this list? Would you mind if we added your course to this list? And if anyone has any input, so maybe there is an English literature professor in the room and you want to add an English literature line, will you tell us something that you're struggling with OER, and maybe we can group think and we can find a solution for you? Or if you're a biology teacher in the room and you have a great addition, would you mind adding your addition to this list? And I would like to make, I'll find a better place for this other than just my own Google Doc. And this is something that we could spend this workshop time building out and discussing as a team, and then we can share this globally.
I'm sorry, so do you want us just to put something in or kind of discuss it with the group first?
Whatever you are most comfortable with. I would love hearing from you, but I know that not everybody wants to turn on their cameras and microphones and speak up in a room full of strangers.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to get the ball rolling. And I don't think what I've worked on, I'm a librarian, so I've worked with other instructors and other courses to work on some things. I don't think anything is probably that new, but I did a quick search of the document. I didn't see it. So one thing is we did teach a research kind of library class at my institution, and we had students contribute and edit to Wikipedia. And so you've probably heard of Wikipedia-thons, that kind of stuff. But right, the idea being instead of handing in a 5-page paper to us that we read, and then it kind of goes in the garbage, that they can publish something, right? Get comments from outside sources, right? So there are editors and readers at Wikipedia that would give them comments. They had to cite everything. So we got them to go through the research process in a way that we thought was a little more meaningful to them. And in particular, we encouraged them to select Wikipedia topics that either did not exist or were maybe underrepresented in a sense. Um, and so we thought it worked pretty well. And students, by the end of the course, not only did all the things we wanted them to do from a instructor point of view, but now they had the knowledge and experience and confidence to contribute to Wikipedia if that's something they wanted to continue doing.
Such a great idea. I love that. And I love that you encourage your students to communicate with the outside academic world. Very cool. Very, very cool.
Yeah. And I have one more if it's unless anyone else wants to jump in, but we did a lot of great work with our dental hygiene program. And particularly coming out of COVID, they started to create assignments where students were, because they're limited lab time, people couldn't be next to each other, that kind of thing. So they started to record videos of some of the procedures and experiences that they needed to do in the lab. And then they posted that. And so not only was it helpful for their classmates and helpful for future semester of students as kind of a tutorial, but also, right, programs outside of our own would sometimes find the videos and use them for instructional purposes.
That's wonderful. That's a really great example too of, I think, something you can do in the CTE program. I had a great conversation with someone who was a CTE dean at another institution, and he was talking about how hard it is to find OER materials, especially in automotive, because they just don't exist. You know, Hyundai is not interested in making OER materials, but he was talking about how his faculty members, you know, because they have such an incredible bank of historical knowledge, could look at pretty much any car and, you know, figure out what's wrong with it and just kind of tinker. So they were basically doing like, I don't know, we call them like car challenges or something. And they would bring in a vehicle that this instructor hadn't worked on before. And they would say, you know, here's the issue. And they would record the teacher walking through their mental process of like, well, here's what I would look and here's what I would check and here's all the things that I would do. And the students would get to watch an expert in the field kind of tackle a new problem in real time and then solve the issue. So even though it wasn't necessarily, you know, traditionally an academic OER, and they weren't writing, you know, a book or something, they were creating these really cool experiences of watching someone who's truly an expert just tackle a project cold and come up with a solution. And it was so fun. Ooh, we're getting lots of good stuff in the chat. Also a librarian. I would just like to say, usually when they do these, I refer to our librarians as magicians. Please speak up if you're a librarian. If I have learned anything, it's that a librarian can solve a problem like no one else. Oh, I apologize. The flu is strong. We do the same thing Benjamin is discussing out with LibGuides. We have students update LibGuides or links or create new ones on special topics. Wonderful. I teach an English course with a LibGuide, post links to the literature. I have a gap in finding open access to plays, short stories, poems, etc. Ooh, does anyone have any feedback on that? Easier ways to finding open access to plays, short stories, poems, and essays? Do we have any literature folks in the room? Not quite, shucks. So one example that I might be able to provide, obviously it's not going to be like reading an essay from Jonathan Swift, but something that another faculty member mentioned, actually for a foreign language course. They were talking about a Spanish course. They were having a hard time finding materials to use for their Spanish course. What this teacher was doing is they were having their first and second year students write materials, come up with writing samples, and they were then using those writing samples for their 300 and 400 level students to correct and critique. So they were saying, for example, you know, obviously a student who's in a 1 year, first or second year Spanish class isn't gonna know all of the different verb forms. Their writing is either going to be, staunchly present tense or past perfect or just these things. So they were taking these writing samples from the earlier classes and then having the Spanish students in the upper level classes make them flow a little bit better or kind of put them in different times and places because they had the vocabulary to do that. So that might be something maybe for that English example. You might not have excellent poetry that you're having access to, but could other students write the poetry? And then other students could then, change the poetry, maybe change it from one form of poetry to another, or could your other students be critiquing that poetry? And it doesn't have to be in real time. And you can, of course, remove the students' names from that information. But that would be an example. Going back to some of our excellent chats, I currently have an intern creating a mental health live guide with local resources. Oh, that's really interesting. Is the intern is it a student at your institution? Is it a student from another institution that is coming and working with you? Is it like a master's degree student that's creating it? Could you tell us more about that? That's really interesting. I would love to include more intern work, or more interns in our OER work. Student at another institution at the UA library school. That's very cool. That's something actually that I had suggested. So later on, as we're building, and again, if you're not comfortable unmuting and speaking, if you wanted to add to this document and just start typing in there, if something doesn't look quite right, again, because this is community built, and we all know things that are community built, sometimes the writing's not perfectly clear, but if you want to add more examples, that would be lovely. But so as we're looking at all of these OER maintenance projects in the classroom, one way, because I know something that students are regularly worried about is the quality that we see in OER, and that's something that our faculty are regularly worried about too, is I would like to propose that at your institution, that you develop an OER student editorial board. Here at Mojave College, we invest a lot in work studies. We really, really, really value our work study students. So I'm looking at our institution creating an OER student editorial board. So what we'll do is we'll recruit students with strong academic performance to serve on an editorial board. They're going to review and suggest updates to OER materials and classes that they've already taken or even classes that they're currently taking. They'll go through the materials and essentially act as editors. Does this make sense? Does this flow? Do all of these links work? And that will be part of their work study hours. That's just part of their role at the college. Students will be, responsible for identifying outdated information, suggesting new sections, evaluating the relevance of proposed updates from other students. So you would essentially have a head of your OER board, students who are responsible for collaborating on that, and your head of your board would then report back to the faculty in charge of that class. You can make this work ongoing. Students on the editorial board can receive recognition for their work, and the experience can be a really strong addition to resumes once they graduate, or portfolios for other programs if you have portfolio requirements. This model provides a lot of continuity as board members can continue on and edit, mentor new editors, ensuring that there's knowledge transfer. I don't know about your institutions, but at our institution, we have a really active student learning center, and we hire tutors. And this is something that my tutors will be able to do if they were a work study that was on the board, or maybe they're part of their tutoring hours were being on this board. And we retain tutors a lot of times after they graduate, so we can keep them going and keep these projects being updated for the ongoing kind of maintenance of OER. Because again, you're here because you understand the importance of OER. Obviously, don't need to preach that to you, but keeping it going and keeping it going well is what's really and truly important. So let's go back to our chat so we can continue to help each other. So Carolyn mentioned, I've run into some issues with my military students and Wikipedia assignments. Their security clearance doesn't allow them to contribute to public forums like that. That's really interesting. The instructor had to be flexible and let them do something else. That's a very new problem, Carolyn. I have not heard of that before. Do you know what the instructor did to allow them to do something else? Did they maybe pull those articles offline, have them work on them within the LMS?
Yeah, I think that so I'm an academic advisor for our student success coach for the SSS Trio program. And I had to fight with the instructor. They were like, no, this is the assignment and this is how it's going to go. And I have at least two students who have security clearance in the military. And the one was really kind of adamant, like, no, I'm not doing this. I could get fired from my job for doing this. And so we had to kind of fight with her a little bit, but she ended up just letting him write a paper instead of contributing to the Wikipedia. So I think it's important when we're thinking about these OER assignments that we are, like Benjamin said, allowing an opt out if they are not able to participate. So yeah, he just did a paper, like a term paper.
That's really interesting. I ran into something kind of similar to that. As an associate dean, I had a faculty member who wanted students to make videos and put them on YouTube. But we had a young woman that was living in a shelter and who needed to protect her location. So she was very nervous about putting her face on the internet. And the instructor was very combative at the idea of the student not agreeing to put their face on the internet. So we ended up just moving the assignment within Canvas, which is obviously protected a lot more than YouTube is. But that's very interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. You do need to give your students an opportunity to opt out of those public facing assignments. Very, very, very interesting. Are there any sections that we are missing on this document that anyone feels that we need to be able to add? Again, this was supposed to be a workshop session, so I didn't plan a whole lot of preaching to you, but rather than working with you. But I also know that it's Friday morning, so maybe
Can you share the link to the document in the chat again?
Sure.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Tonya, I'll add one other with both with dental and with our nutrition students. We would have them work on infographics, which I think you mentioned under history. But the idea being, one, it takes that intimidation off writing the 10-page paper off the students, because that's not really the goal of the course, right? To have them be great writers, even though that's nice, but really to dive into the research, make it useful for their evidence-based practice. And students really liked it because they could get creative. They still did the research, but it was just like a nice, glossy, right, one page kind of thing. And the other thing we accomplished with that, which is a little more to aspects of the open thing, is then they could share it. They had like community projects where they had to go out in the community and help them with nutrition or help them with dental health. And so they could use these class projects and probably continue using them as they went off into their careers and put them in portfolios and that kind of thing. So, to touch again with Carolyn's point, I think you want to always give options. There could be several like open assignment type options, but not always with your face in the camera, not always right doing certain things. And then some students just feel comfortable with the 10-page paper because they know it, they know what to expect, they've done it, they've had success. So I feel like it's never the right thing to say like absolutely not, you can't do something that still, accomplishes the objectives without being open. But, that's just what I've gathered from talking to others.
Yeah. And that's a truly wonderful idea as well, because I mean, as a dental hygienist or as a nutritionist, how often are you sitting down and reading one of your clients a 10-page paper? You don't, you need those academic skills to communicate maybe with the doctor that you're working with, your resident dentist or whatever, but you're not going to read your patient sitting in your chair who's nervous about a cavity or their root canal. You're not going to read them a scientific study on what happens when the gingivitis progresses for too far. So that's a really wonderful example to create infographics to share information and create visuals that are more patient-centered. What a wonderful idea. Do you know what they were building those in? I think that's a really important thing too that we might consider including in documents like this as we help each other. What kind of platforms are we building in that students consistently have access to? Because Adobe, some of the Adobe platforms are really cool if your college is paying for them, but I don't know about you, but I don't have some of those really fun Adobe visualization tools on my personal computer because I wouldn't want to pay the fee. So maybe that's something we should consider adding into something like this that our students can take with them. Canva, of course, is wonderful. I think everyone knows Canva these days.
That's what I was going to say. Canva is my go-to, and they are really, really good about working with education and giving students free access. So,
Mm-hmm. We could work.
Is Flipgrid still around? Has anyone seen Flipgrid? I used to use Flipgrid in my biology assignments where they would record 90-second videos on a topic. It was contained in the class and inward facing, but it was a great assignment that many of my students enjoyed.
Oh, you know what? I just Googled it and it says Flip, formerly Flipgrid. So apparently it's still around, but somebody must have bought her. 12 years. Interesting. Pictochart and Prezi. I'm not familiar with Pictochart. What is Pictochart? Is that an infographic maker? See, that's what we get for having a librarian in the room. They know all of the tools. Felicia makes a really good point that the Benjamin's ideas were particularly wonderful because they're inclusive. They're extremely inclusive of the learner and different learner needs. Is there anyone who's come up with some inclusivity issues that maybe we could discuss about how making an OER more sustainable? Because that is one of the issues that we often run into. I have an instructor this year who has her first student who is visually impaired. And so she's struggling with remaking her OER, like her worksheets and things, because they're not visually accessible. Does anyone have any ideas about sustainability and accessibility?
One of our instructors had a ESL student last semester, and due to the blessing of AI, he was able to work with that student in creating materials that they could better understand throughout the entire semester. So the blessing of AI in helping English as a second language was one that we've come across that has been new to the OER world, but helpful as well.
Is it, have you found one that is particularly good at translation? I'm assuming was it translating it, or was it just breaking down the language into more easily understandable terminology?
So they were translating. They did find that, and they did some checking. So what they would do is they translate it and then back translate it and see how well things were being translated. And it didn't work all the time. They were using ChatGPT for that. Looks like Teresa was asking. And so it wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but compared to what we had before, we had nothing to offer that student before. Now we've got something that we can offer, which is a step forward.
Wonderful. That is an excellent use of AI. I was going to say, I know that's whatever, but it's the hot topic that everyone is discussing right now. Study guides are another OER project that students could probably, oh, that's so funny. Study guides are another OER project that students probably do better at than faculty because they approach it from a student perspective. So this probably is something that we could include on this wonderful working list. Just general class ideas, general course ideas. Have students create and use study guides. They don't have that expert blind spot, so they really know what it is that they're going for. That's not goodness gracious, I am so sorry. I apologize. So some other examples maybe that we have that we could spread to other disciplines. I would say I can't open my Whova app to see where everybody is, or Whova, or I don't know how you say that app, but mine's not working today. So I apologize if someone had posted something in there that I don't have the ability to see. But I thought it would be really interesting for the administration of justice. One of the things I thought could be expanded into other courses was someone had mentioned students can create guides or summaries of legal concepts, criminal codes, or procedural guides, particularly for their local jurisdiction. One of the things that we have been doing with our students, Arizona, of course, has such ecologically unique areas. So I'm in Kingman, Arizona, little town. We're closer to Vegas really than anything else. But we're at about 3,300 feet. So we have a very eclectic mix of creatures that live here in Kingman. So we've been having students make like ecological guides for our region. You can grow a saguaro cactus in your backyard, but only if you put a clay pot on the top of it in winter to protect the top of it. So different things that you could do for OER that are unique to your region that are easily sustainable are things of that nature. You know, what can you do that is indicative of your area that you can actually pull in some family learning into, which I found is a really fun way to make OER sustainable. I realize that sounds a little bit strange, but as a biologist, I can't tell you how many times I've had a kid in my class that I mention plants and suddenly they come alive. And it's not because they particularly care about plants, but because their mother does or their grandmother does. And they've spent their entire lives learning about all of the flowers in their backyard or the weeds that they've been pulling or what they have been tending to. And you can actually create some really interesting projects when you pull in your class's family or maybe some of their cultural learning. And that can be a really fun way to make your OER a little bit more sustainable because you learn things from your students that you have in your spaces. I'm not from here. I'm from Chicago. I don't have any family that's from this area, but my husband's family is native. Part of his family, they're Tonya, so they have a very different perspective on the things that you see in the community and the plants and different names for things. So that can make it really fun to have them add that kind of information into the lab guides. So for this one, the bullet point, you know, talks about having students create guides or summaries for key concepts, but you can have students create guides or summaries for things in your area as to what they see and how they understand it and what those things mean to them. So that can be a way, again, to make your OER a little bit more sustainable, is to pull in some of those cultural experiences. And of course, we don't know. I think the end of the DEI deadline is this week or next week, where all those things are supposed to be removed from our courses. But if you're asking your students to just add in their experiences, then you can make your classes more diverse without saying it. Again, I don't know if we're gonna be allowed to say that in 7 days, but as of right now, we can. So that is a way to include kind of the cultural relevance of your classes without intentionally including cultural relevance. Is there anything else that anyone wants to add to our list of OER projects where you can pull in other students or pull in your students, excuse me? Or topics that aren't here? And say, I can see some people adding stuff. Please don't feel nervous to not add to this. I would love your feedback. That was the whole point of this session, was to be able to have an open discussion.
I'll just add maybe one more thing because silence makes me really uncomfortable and I'm like dying inside when it's quiet for 3 seconds. But you know, I feel like with AI, a lot of the better assignments I've seen is to kind of use AI, but then critique it and fact check it and see where it's going wrong, how you can improve it. And this is not really an AI thing, but I feel like the same idea could be applied to OER. When I meet faculty who are like, oh, I teach US history, I don't like the OER. Great. Like, let's find an OER textbook and your student's project that semester is to rip it apart and improve it. And some of the bullet points you have under history fit perfectly. Like, find the perspectives, the primary sources, the narratives that are not represented or that are represented in a certain way, and let's make this textbook better. And over the course of, I don't know, 4 or 5 semesters, you're going to have a great OER textbook for your class that your students have developed. And then the other thing I like about that from an information literacy point of view and a history point of view, it teaches students that textbooks are not dropped from the heavens and like these stone tablets that we should never contradict. Like they are human made and they can be critiqued and improved and have biases, and you can disagree with them, right? As long as you're doing it with information to back it up. So I love kind of the dual purpose of improving OER and all the different things that teaches to students who do that.
So Ben, I totally agree with that. I think that using AI as a tool to critically look at different topics is a is a unprecedented opportunity for students to learn and grow. Um, and Tanya, you'll remember from my AZ transfer presentation, the AI simulation, biology simulation I shared. And for those, I also shared it in this conference. But the opportunity to interact with AI on a critical research I can't say it in biology, I think is a great opportunity. But I'm sure it could be utilized in many other opportunities out there in chemistry or any other topic we've got on this list. So.
That's absolutely a wonderful point. Does anyone else have any AI apps that they've been using or AI websites they've been using that might help us make our OER resources a little bit more sustainable? Very quiet group today, and that's okay. I absolutely understand the desire to not speak. So I don't intend on taking up more of your time for the sake of rambling. I understand what it's like to be in Zoom for extended periods of time. I'm going to make sure that this link is available for the folks at OER Arizona to see. I'll give it to Megan Crossfield and see if Megan has a preferred place to keep this. All the presentations were going in the app, and we ran out of storage space, which is a beautiful problem to have because it means that there are lots of resources available. I had made a presentation, but it wouldn't quite let me share it, but that's completely okay. So I'm going to share this list. If you would like to share it with others, if you would like to continue adding to it, if you think that someone could find this useful, that would be wonderful. I'm really happy to stay here. I just don't like babbling for the sake of babbling. The whole intention of this session was to be a workshop and to help each other and to share some ideas. But if we're all a little fried, that's okay too. So thank you so much for coming and listening. I apologize for my Dayquil filled brain with the flu. Thankfully I got my flu shot this year, so hopefully it's about over. So I again apologize for coughing in your ear for 40 minutes. This wasn't my original plan. Have a lovely rest of your Friday, and I am so sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya, very much for your presentation and your workshop. I love it. I love the interactive part of it. And I think everyone will take a lot
Thank you,
from this.
Felicia. Yes, I hope so. I know how it can be hard. I don't always like jumping in and talking to strangers on Zoom either. And when you're a facilitator, sounds like they're on their deathbed, it's less than exciting. So it's been a day. So it was nice to see you, Nathan.
Good to see you too. I'll be sending you an email because I want to invite you to be on the OER Arizona podcast.
Wonderful.
I'll be sending you that email later on. So have a
Okay,
good day.
great. Thank you.